there! Well, today's video is going to be all about my pantry essentials. I thought it might be fun to share with you the non-perishable items that I like to make sure I have on hand in my pantry at all times. These are items that I tend to use over and over again in my recipes. They're also things that it seems like a lot of recipes call for, or things that are really great to have on hand to throw together a last-minute meal or a really quick dinner. So let's go ahead and go into my kitchen and I will show you what I've got. So starting here in the front, I like to keep a couple different kinds of beans on hand for different things, just to serve sometimes on their own as a side dish or part of a chili or a soup, something like that. Also taco meat recipes and things. So I usually keep a can of black beans on hand. And then I also like to keep a pinto bean on hand. Again, this is something that I use in taco recipes or in chilies and things like that. I just think some sort of protein like this is always important to keep on hand. I'm just going to move these things out of the way as we go through them here. Okay, next I like to keep a canned vegetable. So I choose green beans or peas most often, usually whatever's on sale. I just like to make sure I have some sort of vegetable so that if I don't have anything fresh or frozen on hand, I can always make sure I have something to serve with a meal. And then, of course, I always have to have broth. This is for stewing vegetables or any types of crock pot recipes. This just comes in handy for so many different things. I always have to have chicken broth, and then I like to have beef broth as well. Something else that I found that comes in really handy is having evaporated milk on hand. I have been making mashed potatoes or something that requires milk so many times, and I realized I didn't have anything fresh in my refrigerator or it was expired and I needed to have something or else I wasn't going to be able to make my recipe. So now I always keep a can of evaporated milk on hand. Next is something that I don't actually use this for cooking, but I always have it with me in my pantry, and this is Progresso traditional chicken rice soup. I just really like to have some sort of soup on hand, whether someone comes down ill all of a sudden and you're not prepared for it, or you just don't feel well, or you need a really quick meal. I think it's important to have some sort of protein and pasta or rice soup on hand, so I always have that. Next is breadcrumbs. I use these for some types of vegetables, like maybe roasting eggplant, baking zucchinis and things like that. This is great for meatloafs, cutlets, all sorts of things. And I prefer the Italian style breadcrumbs. I just like that they have a little bit of seasoning to them. I use this in my meatloaf. And so different things like that, but I always just like to have these on hand. Next, I always keep vegetable oil. This is great for obviously all sorts of frying and cooking, but also if you're making a recipe, if you get a brownie or cake recipe from the store, you're always going to need vegetable oil to make these, so I just find it something that I must keep on hand. And then, of course, for any type of baking and also cooking, you need flour. This is, again, good for any sort of cutlets, any sort of baking recipes, different things like that, so I always have flour. And going along with the flour, I always need sugar for different things as well, so I always like to make sure I'm never out of that, especially as we come into the fall baking season. Okay, so I'm sort of moving all of this out of the way here. The next thing I always keep on hand is a jar of some sort of spaghetti sauce or red sauce. This is marinara. I like to use this to make pizzas at home. Also just for a really quick meal if we're in a pinch and I need to put together some sort of pasta. This is also great over the chicken cutlets or something like that, but I just find that this comes in so handy to always have a jar of sauce on hand. Next is olive oil. I just could not live without olive oil. I use this so many different times a week for roasting my vegetables, which is something that I make quite often, or sauteing something. It's just one of those things that we always have to have on hand. Fortunately, our grocery store does buy one, get one on this often, so I can usually stock up for a pretty good price. Next, this is something that my husband really enjoys, and it does help for making a quick side dish for him, but I always keep a white basmati rice on hand. He really likes these, and they just take 90 seconds to heat up, so it's just sort of one of those nice things to have. Sometimes if I have chili in the freezer, he'll just pour it over that, or he actually likes to eat it plain with his meals for work and things like that. So this is just something I always make sure I have at least one or two of in my pantry. Okay, next I also keep some uncooked rice. I just find that this is helpful to have. I like to make Mexican rice on my own, or sometimes there's just other recipes that call for it. So I try to keep a little bit in a container on hand just in case. And then also I keep pasta. I do like to make a large batch of pasta sauce and keep it in my freezer. So I just have this OXO container and I try to keep rotini on hand at all times. I find that it's just a really good, versatile pasta for different things. And it's easy for my husband to eat at work. It's not one of those pastas that you have to really cut and mess with a lot. It's pretty easy to eat in bite-sized pieces. So I like to keep rotini. Also pasta salads and things like that. Okay, and I have some other tomato items here. So tomato sauce, again, something that I use in a lot of different recipes, crock pot recipes, chilies, things like that. I always find that I need tomato sauce quite often. And then petite diced tomatoes, again, chilies, soups, stews, things like that. These come in really handy also to put together any sort of really quick meal. These are always sort of nice to have on hand if you don't have fresh tomatoes. And then tomato paste. I have a brisket that I like to make with this, or any sort of beef stew or pot roast, different things like that that require braising ahead of time and then going into the oven for a low and slow cook. I love to have this tomato paste on hand. And then Parmesan cheese. I've shown you in my how I like to roast vegetables video that I use Parmesan cheese, so this is something that I always have to keep on hand. Plus I use it in my meatloaf sometimes and just on other different vegetables that I bake and things like that. So of course spaghetti. So nice to have that. And then I always keep a barbecue sauce as well. Again, this is something that my grocery store will put on BOGO often, so I just like to have it so that if I have some chicken in the freezer, we want a really quick meal, I know that I can give it some flavor if I haven't had time to marinate. Maybe it's a last minute type of thing. I know if I've got some barbecue sauce, at least we don't have to have just a plain chicken. And then salsa. This is something that's really important. I do use this also in a lot of different recipes. I've shown you my shredded chicken for tacos. This is something I like to use for that. I like to put this over eggs, different breakfast items, dinner items when we have taco nights. Just comes in so handy for a variety of things. So this is something that I always keep on hand. And next is honey. Honey I like to use in my tea. It's great for a honey mustard marinade for chicken. It's good for sweetening a lot of different things. So this is just one of those staple items for me that's important to have. Next I have taco seasoning. I'm actually not sure why I have this particular brand. I usually get a different one, but I think that's another type of thing that's sort of great to have on hand. If you've got a pound of ground beef in your freezer or you've got some chicken, you can make the shredded chicken for tacos. You can make regular tacos or anything like that. So it's just kind of one of those quick, easy things to have for a meal. And then this is zesty Italian dressing. Again, something that my grocery store puts on BOGO often, but not only do I really love this particular brand for salads, I also like to drizzle this on turkey subs. I love the flavor that it gives. And also this is a really nice chicken marinade, so we always keep the Italian on hand. And then soy sauce. I've done a couple crock pot recipes with this, so this is nice to have. Of course, if you have Chinese takeout or different recipes I've used call for a little bit of this for seasoning, so it's just kind of handy to have. And then balsamic vinegar, again, something I've used in a few different recipes, sauteing especially. I like to saute mushrooms, and there's a recipe that I use that has balsamic vinegar used in that, so it's just something that's kind of nice to have when you need it. And then finally, I don't know what happened to my label here, but this is Worcestershire sauce. I think this is, yeah, this is French's brand, but something that I use in my brisket recipe, and just a lot of different things require usually a dash of this or something. So it's just one of those sort of essential things that I like to have because it does add some good flavor to recipes when you need it. So that is it. Those are all of my pantry essentials. Another tip that I can offer you is to take a Sharpie marker and write on your item last one, if it's the last one in your pantry. That way you know that if you use that item, you need to be sure to put that on your grocery list for your next shopping trip. That way you're never without it. So I hope that this was helpful to you. I thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you very soon. Bye-bye.